So without further ado, let me introduce you to our 5 guests for this open lunch, which will explain how they approach creativity in public spheres. So first we have Bella Wu, who holds a bachelor and master's degree in art education and has an experience of more than 20 years as an art educator, fitness trainer, entrepreneur, and mentor. Villa has published in American art education magazines and made appearances on breakfast television for her novel art projects. Villa is the founder of Happy Imagination, a unique children's service that brings personalized art and fitness activities to homes, schools, and centers. Then we have Penny Haight, which is an artist, educator, leader in creative teaching and learning, senior lecturer in Arts Education School of Education, research fellow at the Center for Cultural and Creative Industries, Concordia University, and Director of Research for House of Imagination. Signature projects include School Without Walls and First of Imagination. Her PhD focused on children's learning identity as artists, awarded in 2018. She's a co-investigator on the AHRC Global Challenges Research Project, Rethinking Waste, in 2000 for the 13 Lab in Mumbai. Then we have Alexandre Bala Ekobena, Sasha, which is an architect with a focus in computational design in the field for art, design, and architecture. He holds a bachelor degree from Ball State University and a master's degree in integrative technology and architectural design research. He currently applies his interest in the use of computational design to enhance fabrication and design workflows as a technical manager in Advanced 3D and Adidas AG. Afterwards, we have Andrew Amansan, which is an American-born artist and filmmaker living in Berlin. His career documentaries includes collaborations with Wim Wenders. He formed Playful Nature in 2015 with fellow artist Benjamin Martin, co-creating play-based installations in Berlin and sharing their work in Denmark, Italy, and the UK. He joined Studio Olafur Eliasson in 2017. His own artistic practice focuses on participative installations connecting us to nature and one another. Last but not least, we have Geneviève Lamarche, which has a creative path that has been a unique journey and currently pursuing a bachelor's in education with a focus on market education. Up to you, Anne-Louise.
Thank you for these presentations, Ernit. So let's jump straight into the projects so that we can hear a little bit about each participant. So let's start with Andrew and Sasha to hear. Oh, actually, let's start with Penny to hear a little bit about the Forest of Imagination. Over to you, Penny.
That's great. I'll just give you a whistle-stop tour for 4 minutes and then pass over to Andrew and Sasha. So let me share my screen. Is that good? Excellent. So in terms of a metaphor, thinking about spaces of possibility, just to give you a little bit of a background. My background, I trained in fine art and education, and then ended up 20 years later working at Tate Modern before it opened in setting up these experimental sites for learning. And really thinking about children's philosophical questions. Can we bring the outside inside? How big does a map have to be inside it? And putting the emphasis on artists, teachers, cultural professionals working together alongside each other, alongside children and young people. So our patron, Ken Robinson, who sadly died last year, but a lot of our work is in his memory and in his legacy, continuing his legacy. So spaces of encounter, spaces of possibility. Our signature project, School Without Walls, where children spend a whole term of their schooling out in the city as a campus for learning. We co-design the curriculum with the children using 100 languages of expression across multidisciplinary contexts. Here in the Egg Theatre in Bath, across the 12 museums in the city, and out in the city centre, taking over derelict shops, disused spaces as galleries of learning. And the Forest of Imagination, the context that Andrew and Sasha will share in a minute, our shared project. Andrew Grant, who designed Gardens by the Bay in Singapore, exploring the idea of the super trees. He's a Bath resident, his children go to a local school, and we're very interested in co-designing spaces in the city to bring nature, creativity and imagination into the public realm. So we work alongside 55 different partners, about 100 artists a year, depending on funding. We take over iconic spaces like the Abbey, with a theme around, you know, where we can make a difference in the world. So here, saving the lemurs and the baobabs in Madagascar. Andrew now has a research centre there. Taking over spaces by the river. Here, our students are working alongside children to co-design drawing machines, 1,000 trees in the forests, pop-up houses of imagination, and a beautiful cardboard maze. The last physical event until this year was 2019 at the Holborn Museum, again working with Field and Clegg Bradley Studios with a pop-up pavilion for a space for encounter, a space for inquiry, working with the local hospital, local artists, and international artists as well, international architects. So this year we had to pivot to a digital platform. Well, in 2020 we had to pivot to a digital platform. We were going to be an Art Deco cinema, but instead of rewilding this, we took over a platform with TED Countdown and had an event over May to October to celebrate the idea of our collective imagination in response to climate change. And out of that, we've also been working on an initiative with the Rabbit Holes Collective, with the Bristol and Bath Creative R&D and the BBC team to co-design adaptive podcasts with children and young people being able to metaphorically fall down a rabbit hole. So this year, over the last 3 days, we've been traveling around the city to reimagine spaces, to think about how a familiar space can inspire creativity and imagination, and that obviously innovation follows imagination. So I'm going to hand over now to Andrew and Sasha.
Thanks, Penny. Yeah, the force of imagination is why I'm here today. And she mentioned, Penny mentioned Sir Ken Robinson, and there's this prompt from him, this provocation that is that we need to reimagine and think about the world and what we take for granted, and look at it with this and finish the sentence, imagine if. And that's what the idea that I want to share with you today is, and that's called a living tree. The idea came from standing under the tree, the iconic Christmas tree at Brandenburg Gate, and being overwhelmed in this moment with its beauty, but also with a deep sense of sadness for the loss of its life. And I thought, well, imagine if we didn't have to cut down this tree. And so I started to think about how this could work in a different way. And I wanted to think about here. I'm going to share a little presentation here. And back to the beginning. And so the idea for the living tree is it's a scalable Christmas tree for public spaces made out of smaller potted trees that are then planted after the holidays. And the idea is that how can we bring together a community where individuals, families, businesses bring these small young potted trees, these plants, and then come together, at this time during the holiday into the structure and bringing out of many, building one, and taking this familiar form and filling it with new meaning. And then after the holidays, the idea is to plant these individual trees in participatory urban wilding projects that are developed with the communities and determined by the communities. And as you come through the cycle there to the end, it really is about regenerating and regenerative ecosystems and ecologies for the places where these small ultra-dense forests can be planted within cities. So that's the idea, but at the point when I had this idea, I didn't quite know how to make it. But luckily I joined the studio from Olaf Eliasson a few years back and met a lot of wonderful artists and designers and makers that helped me start to realize the idea and to visualize it. And so here's an early visualization of the project, the living tree. And it was during this time, seeing this idea, I had ideas of how the design could work, but not until somebody could help me with the modeling. And I was introduced to Sasha, who could take the design further with me to adapt it. But the realization here is that in the visualization, how important it is to visualize positive change. You know, just in the same way that reading 1.5 degrees warmer doesn't have the same effect as seeing glaciers crumble into the sea, we need to see visual change. And so to the design, I want, Sasha is going to tell you more about the design here, the next iterations of the design.
So at this point, what was quite critical was to try and think of where we have this quite beautiful idea and how do we start to make that true. So at the early stages of the design, to create this living tree, it was consisting of a series of potted trees that were cantilevering out and being supported by this main structure. Slowly we started to revise the design in collaboration with some engineers to try and figure out how much can we change in this tree and how high we can scale it up. And of course, finding that there were some limitations in having this long cantilevering arm and trying to work through what we could do to move past this limitation. And I think during the course of this, Andrew had an interesting conversation with Penny.
Yeah, I met Penny at a conference in Aarhus, where it's all about play initiative, play-based design, and we were both presenting there. And she told me all about the forest of imagination, and immediately I was hooked on this idea of a creative community coming together to connect the community with nature. And I shared the living tree idea with her, and one of the first things she asked me was, well, can you go in the tree? And it was such a simple and piercing question that in that moment, just bubbles started to float and pop, and ideas about what could happen if we went inside the tree. The different immersive and experiential experiences that we could have, you know, bringing in a forest floor, bringing in the sound, bringing in the smell, and connecting us to nature. And it also had a really wonderful effect on the design.
So the beautiful thing, thank you, Penny, again. But a couple of things happen when with being able to free up the structure inside the tree. So the first part being that this allowed us to actually have a space inside the living tree. And this also made it more structurally sound. So not only were we then engaged into thinking of what can we do with the space inside, we could also segment it while keeping it structurally sound. And we could also, because it's a cone, which is quite stable, think of the pyramids, then it also allowed us to start thinking of even reaching greater heights with this structure. Shortly after this, we then started to look into more depth for the fabrication and started to engage back with students of Concordia University of Design, College of Design. And
right, this was a wonderful opportunity for us, because one of the most important things is not just to have a monument standing there or a structure standing there, but having the encounter, the interaction, and taking something from it. So the community engagement was so super important. And with Bath School of Design students, we took the idea of playful design thinking to connect with each other, and then to come together on an idea of how we could bring life to the living tree year round, not just a Christmas tree.
That's wonderful. You want to pass it on to someone else to share?
Yeah, I'll pass it on to Maggie. Imagine if we could create a space in Bath.
Imagine if the tree could change its shape and its structure.
Imagine if there was the most incredible sensory, real and imagined space that drew on all of the senses and also brought in some sensory tech, so you were in an immersive environment where you could feel the raindrops.
And from there, we went into different creative online spaces to collaborate on the idea.
And getting people emotionally invested. And almost like if you created an installation at home with your kids or as a family sponsor, like a section of the tree, a community project.
Imagine if a Christmas tree wasn't just for Christmas, but for spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Up all year round. Imagine if it was a habitat for local wildlife and insects, growing native wildflowers and plants, attracting bees and butterflies.
And so from here, we take the idea and the inspiration from from the students here to create a community project within Forest of Imagination. And Kate Cross, the director of the Egg Theater at Royal Theatre Bath, has invited us to bring the tree into the theater. And so we're thinking about how to create this installation in the theater with this living tree at the center and a forest growing around it, a canopy room up top and the roots connecting down below the three spaces.
A really crucial part to this whole experience is actually the collaboration. And through all the different collaborations and people at the Egg, we were able to meet Mark Carey, who of Shed Voice, who was helping with the visualization that you're seeing here, and as well as the product management. From a design, the design was revised with the inputs of Charlie Brentel from Xylotech, and having Ben Hancock from Carpenter Org, and a bunch of other people, especially in this time when you're working remotely. It was possible to keep on having these ideas being generated, improving, collaborating, and then looking for a new context to improve and engage it so that people can now reappropriate it.
Right. So the real, like Sasha said, that the collaboration is what's key to this, and this project that will take place, this overtaking of the egg and the forest inside the egg, is going to happen in Bath in September, and this is made possible by these wonderful connections that come through Forest of Imagination and the creative people that are in this community. So artists like Roxana Vilkir with a light and sound installation, Martin, where we have these immersive soundscapes and lighting, and also storytelling from the artists in residence at the theater. And so I'll just end with that, saying that we're continually adapting this idea to share with communities that are interested. And let's see if I can come back to the call now. There we go. There. Okay, so that's the living tree. Thanks for listening, and yeah.
Thank you, Andrew and Sasha and Penny. So over to you, Vila.
Thank you, Anne-Louise. Such great presentations so far. Now, I started a children's service called Happy Imagination in 2009, and I focused on providing art and fitness activities. A few years later, I formed a partnership with a local community center. Since the pandemic, the classes were given online until the end of April. We then started giving outdoor activities in May. I was very excited to use nature as inspiration to set up activities in an urban green space. I also took advantage of the architecture and the landscape, such as trees, concrete tiles, and windowsills made the perfect props for social distancing, as well as constructing art and fitness activities. How I create a conducive learning and teaching, how I create a conducive learning and teaching environment depends on how a space is set up. These papers were purposely set up in a semicircle for participants to have easy access to all of the materials, as well as to encourage an exchange of ideas and to interact with one another. And from the instructor's role, I found it made it easier for me to address everyone in a group, as well as to make everyone feel included. Here are some samples of nature art. I also provided some additional art supplies to enhance the art making experience. So the materials are very tactile, such as yarn, straws, and markers, and stickers as well. Kids love stickers. It's also great for fine motor skills. I'd like to walk through one of my projects with you. These found objects were placed on windowsills for children to have access when they arrive. The kids participated in both guided activities and free play. Free play meaning they were given the freedom to explore and play with the given media. The guided activities inspires children to share their ideas verbally and physically. And for those children who are shy to express their words, they can show us the movement physically, and everyone will follow, and each child gets an opportunity to share their ideas. I love how nature can be used as a medium. The branches were used to create fitness props. Oh, I highlighted the branches because the branches were not visible on the photographs. The children made or constructed ladders as well as different shapes. They used their imagination to play with what they made. Now, these branches were not only used to make fitness props, but they were also transformed into art sculptures. Now, these activities were given in the same day. The children collected their branches, we moved to another space, and I demonstrated on how I made an arrow using more tactile materials such as plasticine, feathers, elastic bands, and rhinestones. Both adults and children were extremely focused on constructing their own sculpture. A lot of problem-solving skills are put into place. For example, how do I attach a feather onto a branch? Now, this may seem very simple to an adult, but for children or a child, it's quite a challenging task. So they tried a variety of ways to attach a leaf or a feather. Now, I find it quite fascinating how something so simple as a branch or a familiar object can be used for multiple purposes. These are samples of the sculptures made, and one of the young artists used the branches to frame the display. I thought that was a perfect way to end the session because she took the branches to another level. And as for how children develop their ideas organically, I believe that when the right media or tools and proper guidance, that can definitely inspire children to develop the ideas naturally. Because one idea will always lead to another. And when they're just doing, playing, seeing, and sharing, all that triggers the imagination. So I hope this presentation shows you how much I enjoy creating community-friendly experiences through art, fitness, and nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Vila. That was really inspiring. And we'll follow up on some of the aspects of the questioning and some of the links between what you just said and what the UK team has just mentioned. So I'll hand it over to Geneviève now, who will talk about her experience with creativity. Over to you, Geneviève.
Thank you. So let me share my screen. So, okay, so I was invited here today to talk about creativity, so I thought I'd share a bit of my creative journey. So first of all, creativity should never be put in a box. I had the negative experience in elementary school, as most of my teachers would critique my way of drawing, my way of coloring inside the lines, or the fact that I wanted to draw color Santa in pink and not red. In the end, I remember not liking doing art and never followed through on any creative path. So I ended up as a tech in IT, but I knew I was very creative, but I didn't feel anybody saw that potential growing up. Then again, school in the 80s didn't foster any form of creative self-expression. So in my late 20s, I actually lived in Bristol in the UK for a few years, and I had the opportunity to meet and befriend a DJ named Josh Gabriel, who saw something in me that no teacher saw. His own creative nature sparked some intense creativity in a very multidisciplinary project. He believed in my potential and he fully supported me. So as you can see, out of Bristol, I created this really big multidisciplinary project of dancing Playmobil, because Bristol has like some really amazing music to offer. So the project was enormous. I built about 10 different clubs, the infrastructure, the lighting, the dance floor. So I think you get the point. So following this particular Playmobil project, I had a kid, and with him over the years, I built a really cool creative space. And we did like loads of creative projects together. And then when he was 3 or 4 years old, I felt secure enough to pursue a career in cooking and in restaurant management. And while in school, I had this amazing opportunity to learn from Chef Gilles Penot, who, like Josh, supported my highly creative ideas. So in school, my focus was in kids' food choices at restaurants. And when I would share my ideas with my chef, he would say, well, you know what, why not? What I did is I took my creative spaces, my 3D printing, and I applied it to food. And I created some really innovative children's meals. And I would apply some 3D printing, which I learned at my local library, the Benny Fab Lab. And I would add color naturally, and I molded some food in some really cool ways. When COVID-19 hit last year, it changed my whole focus, as I knew the restaurant industry would be hard hit. So I took my creative space passion and applied to Concordia to pursue an education in makerspace. But little did I know that no education is really given in makerspace culture. So I complained to the education department, and I was quickly put in contact with, you may have guessed, with Dr. Anne-Louise Davidson. So under Anne-Louise, my creativity has explored so many new possibilities. She helped me build more confidence, and I've been having fun with my son with a multitude of maker projects and robotics, Arduino, and microbit, and so much more. So as you can see, for me, creativity is not limited, nor can it be contained. And what do these 3 people have in common? Well, they were all creative forces of nature. They listened, they supported the potential that was possible. And in my personal opinion, people inspire people. So I took that inspiration and that I got, and I gave back to the community, as now I teach home economics in high school for teenage mothers. And I hope to inspire more people in the maker culture. For me, I think you can innovate in creativity by simply going out there and inspiring as many people as you can, by listening to them and supporting the possible potential, because you really never know who or what you may inspire. So yeah, thank you very much. That was my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Bravo, everybody. That's so there are, I see a lot of links, but I think now is the time to discuss maybe how we see the intersections between these projects. So there's a lot of crucial aspects to discuss when we're rethinking creativity in public spaces or in events or even in pedagogy. Obviously, sometimes the most limiting creative experiences happen when kids enter school, and that model has to be turned on its head. A lot of us are working in this way, but we always have the constraints of the system, such as evaluation, or such as report cards, or accountability, for example, that all cause problems. But then there's also issues in terms of how we have I guess how we have cellularized. I don't even know if this is it's a proper word, but we have put things in boxes. And when I heard you speak, I saw a lot of intersections between education, urban living, cities, the built environment as well, because that needs to be challenged as well. But also sustainability aspects, perhaps even frugality or voluntary simplicity. And I was wondering if anybody wanted to talk about some of the links that maybe you have seen as others were presenting, or maybe even some more intersections that we could discuss.
I'm happy to kick off. I mean, I'm really inspired by all of the projects. And I suppose, what I've been doing in all of my professional life, or possibly my personal life as well, but is to open up these spaces of possibility. And we talk about spaces of encounter, setting up experimental sites for pedagogy, but I think it's really important to make the creativity visible, that it's in the city, it's in the town, in the village. It belongs to everyone. Everybody is creative and they're part of it. And I think that's where the co-design and the co-production the collaboration is so important, because then people feel a part of it and they can see their own creativity and follow those kind of creative pathways. I'm going to pass over.
So what
Andrew wants to jump in. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Genevieve.
No, it's just one of the slides that I saw was action inspires action. People inspire people. I think that's what I'm seeing as well. It is you really need to just go out there and inspire people. And that will create some inspiration, which will take that and give it to somebody else. So it's a domino effect, I find.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ken Robinson. Yeah, sorry, Andrew. I'll say one phrase from Ken Robinson, then pass to you. But Ken used to talk about the Grassroots Revolution. You probably know his book, Creative Schools, and he talks about the Grassroots Revolution. So he's starting with the local ecology and growing that kind of creative ecosystem. Sorry, Andrew, you go.
No, I was just gonna jump in as well and say, you know, inspired by what Genevieve said, and also this idea that you're creating a space, but very importantly is the listening, that real active listening and drawing out, because too often in education you have a minute to answer a question in a yes or no manner, but there isn't this you know, a soft question that makes all the opportunities available to you to explore and to really listen and take the time. And I think that's what's inspiring by the other things that we heard today. Create the space and really take the time to listen. And then you find that you are connected in so many different ways that then help you with your own ideas. And it's also great when you can, you know, step in or jump in and dive in and help somebody else with theirs.
Yes, I totally agree with everyone just said. Now, it's what Genevieve said, people inspire people, and absolutely. And not just, well, inspiring people as well as providing them the space to create, as what Andrew mentioned. And the space and time is extremely important, because when people are giving a time frame, they feel a little bit stressed and they may get a little bit frustrated. And when someone gets emotionally frustrated, they may just give up. So I think by creating or just preparing classes that are open-ended, that everyone can feel they feel successful and proud of what they're making. And also Penny mentioned a space where everyone belongs. And that's something I would love to foster, because I work with, with the community center, and the people in the neighborhood are so proud of where they live. And when people contribute to, for example, Andrew, the tree that you've created, like I could see my neighborhood being involved in creating a seasonal tree, perhaps one for winter, one for spring, one for fall, and one for, what season did I miss? I mean, I'm not quite sure what type of flowers or arrangement they would use, but I can see everyone just feel so proud to grow something in their home and then build an installation together. I think it would be a wonderful thing. And also using familiar objects as, who mentioned familiar objects or something familiar? But I think using familiar objects, it's incredible how that can be transformed into anything. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Rita. Did anybody want to say anything else around possible intersections?
Well, I'd like to say something because, like I said in my text, I didn't feel growing up in the 80s that any teacher would foster creative self-expression. However, now that my son is in school, I still don't think they foster any creative self-expression, because every time they have art projects, all the kids are given the same thing to do. And they can't seem to get out of that box that the teacher is giving them. I have and you go into these schools and you see these like walls of art, but guess what? It's all the same thing. There's no outside of the box artwork that is being done in schools today. It's just, here's what you're going to do. You're going to do a slow globe and that's it. And I think that needs to change. That creativity in a box type of mentality.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just to add, I mean, the name of our charity is now House of Imagination because we were called 5 by 5 for 20 years, and we renamed ourselves in memory of Ken Robinson, and we're working closely with his daughter Kate now on the Imagine If concept. If we have time, maybe we should share Andrew Grant's film, Anne Louise. But I think the strapline of our charity is the freedom to follow fascinations. So inviting not just children actually, but everybody to find and follow their fascinations, to be curious in the world. And in fact, at our university, we've redesigned our postgraduate certificate in education to put the 4 C's at the heart of the programme. So it's all around creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, care. You know, I would carry on curiosity, compassion, climate, all of the C's. But I think it's really important that, you know, whether you're a child or an adult, then you find that intrinsic motivation to want to pursue learning, that you want to get up in the morning and be curious about the world and find the way you want to express yourself, because there's so many different ways. That's why we were inspired by the practice in Reggio Emilia in Italy, because it's very much around kind of environments of encounter and Andrew, a pedagogy of listening.
Yes, sorry, I want to piggyback a little bit on what you just said, Penny and Genevieve. Just from the experience of particularly with the students at Badspa, something that I do think that helps a lot is more about the framing of the questions, where the idea is not result oriented, where you already know what you have in mind and then you're trying to get there. But if there's anything that has been really great about this process and similar ones, is by it being process and idea oriented, then you welcome different paths that it could take you. And I think even more importantly, it opens up the space for collaboration. Whereas very often when result oriented, and then it's also reflected later when it's taught in this way in school, is then you have an idea that's fixed and it can be very individualistic and also freezes you from being able to take in new information, new influences, and to collaborate. So just the process of going through the living tree, seeing, for example, from the point at which Andrew got in contact with me and already where the idea went, and the being idea and process focus allowed it to go to in a very different path that I don't think I would have anticipated, and is thus also richer for it. So yeah, this is the main thing for me. It's like what is the approach that is taken to creativity can make quite this, it's a really small difference and it can make such a huge impact.
Yeah, and just to add to that, another intersection between all of everybody who's speaking today, but also with the language that comes from the Innovation Lab, this idea of being playful and having the space to fail. Yeah, that's also, I think in all of this is like when you're given the space to, and the directive or the non-planned gift is to play together. It's just amazing how people, if you're given that space to play, how connections can happen so easily. And then you let down your guard, and then you can fail, and you can iterate, and you can try, and you can, just like with the arrows on the lawn and the sticks, and there's so much to figure out, and there's so much we can figure out together, which is even more exciting.
I'd like to add to approaches to creativity, and as well as how certain schools may produce stereotypical art. Now, in the teacher's defense, a lot of the teachers don't have an art education background. A part of the curriculum is to have children make art. But I think that if perhaps some of the teachers, or if the schools are open to learning how to, or learn how to teach children art in a more open way. For example, as Sasha mentioned, how to ask questions. Instead of saying, let's make let's make an arrow. So step one, everyone, let's make a little ball. Instead, you can ask them questions on what do arrows look like? Or what colors do you see? I think that asking questions can open an entire world, especially to children. Now, as for stereotypical art, I think it's okay if everyone makes the same object. But I think that creativity is used in different ways. If children are given the space and time to personalize their art, that makes a big difference. But again, it also comes back to, some schools don't have the luxury to hire art educators, unfortunately. Some that do, they create something very different because they also have the funding to splurge on materials. But at the same time, you don't need a lot of materials to make something spectacular.
I think you have a point there around kind of, I'm involved in initial teacher education, and we're talking with the English education system, through the House of Commons and the House of Lords at the moment about redesigning maybe a new cultural education plan that does allow inverted commas generalists to have that confidence and develop their competence alongside children and young people. And I think it's very much about, seeing themselves as creative and not having been through a rigid curriculum themselves to, as Ken said, that our schools killing creativity. So Anne-Louise, back to you.
Thank you, Penny. As you are all speaking, I have so many memories of my journey as an art teacher, because that's what I did before being a professor. I was for almost a decade as an art teacher in high schools, and a lot of what you're saying echoes into the experience of, first of all, becoming an art teacher. So how do you come up with projects that are not boxes? Because if you look, for example, at Legos used to be mountains of pieces, and then they became kits that had to be assembled and then put on a shelf. So there is a global tendency, a commercial tendency to box things or to sell kits, even to art teachers who are sometimes generalists who don't feel the confidence or the creative confidence to get into this. And there's also another aspect of this, which is once you come up with an interesting projects, and I can refer back to, for example, sometimes I was lucky enough to be able to buy Velrock. So I don't know if that's, it's a brand name for plaster, cotton cheese plaster that's already made. So you just have to put water on it and then you can mold things. And I had the wild idea 1 month of June to say, let's just do a Velrock project. Everybody's wearing shorts, so let's mold knees and heels and start to assemble things. And those things turned into trees. And the year after, I thought, well, what other project could I do? And then students were telling me, when are we doing the knee project? And I thought, well, how about we do hands this time? But the students said, well, I took this class to do the knee project because my sister did the knee project last year. So there's also a tendency to repeat experiences. And I think that, part of the call is to call out to the community and to ask, who else wants to be part of this? Who can bring in new ideas? And that partnership is actually, giving confidence to anybody who's a generalist, but at the same time, bringing in new ideas, about, well, that's being done over there. And maybe we won't replicate, for example, the forest of imagination in the same way that it's been done in the UK or in Asia, but maybe we can have a Montreal flavor to the forest of imagination. So maybe if I bring this, we're approaching 1 o'clock now, and I can see the time go by really fast. But what potential do you see, post-COVID time, where we're back, but we're not back. And when we're back, we know that it might not last. But what potential do you see for creativity in the public spheres, and maybe what possibilities for future collaborations between forests, cities, Forest of Imagination, Living Lab, Montreal? I'll let you speak openly about that.
We would love, and I can speak on behalf of Andrew Grant as well, because he was on the previous call with you, Anne-Louise, and has met you, but we would love to bring a Forest of Imagination and co-design it with you in Montreal. And of course, it would be very different to the UK context. I don't know whether there's time to show Andrew's film. It's 3 minutes. Is there time, or should we just send it to people in the link, which is easier? Your call.
I think there is time. I can run the film a little bit.
So just to put that in context, Andrew set out a provocation in the Imagine If week with Kate Robinson in memory of Ken, talking about how every community needs a forest of imagination and putting nature back into our lives, especially in response to the pandemic. So Andrew Grant is director and founder of Grant Associates.
Hello.
Go.
Okay,
I'm Andrew Grant. I'm a landscape architect and co-founder of Forest of Imagination. Now, imagine if cities were defined not by their buildings and architecture, but by landscape and ecology. Wouldn't that be amazing sort of inversion of the way we think about urban spaces? Wouldn't it be a great way of thinking about how do we redefine what makes a quality of life when we're living in cities? If we structure the way we plan and design our cities around access to nature and the ability to have a diversity of experiences in any given day. Imagine from your home, within a 10-minute walk, you could visit at least 6 or 7 amazing pieces of landscape. Perhaps you pass through a woodland, a forest, an urban farm, you go past an amazing grassland, you see a pond, you pass a waterfall. All of these things are possible. We can build these into the way we create our urban spaces because we need them. We need this sort of contact with nature, and we need to reimagine how we plan our living, working environments. Now, over the last year, I think we've all realized that actually access to nature, access to the seasons, access to the sound of birds, access to the life that of the natural world around us is absolutely key to keeping us sane and happy. Now, why can't that be really sort of translated into new ways of thinking about how we create our places to live and to work? I'm very passionate about this, and I think this Imagine If project has created the opportunity to sort of just put that out there as a proposition. Completely invert the way we think about landscape. It's not just a backdrop, it's part of our life support system. It provides our air, our oxygen, it manages our water, it creates food, and perhaps really importantly, it's a really inspirational place. And a great aspect of this natural world is its fundamental to human health and well-being. So imagine if we define our cities not by buildings and architecture, but by landscape and ecology and nature.
Brilliant. And that, just to add and then hand back to you, but we are designing a new living architecture degree at Bath University that we're probably going to be involving live projects. So this could be one in collaboration with Gala and Concordia and Louise.
Well, thank you, Penny. This is an open invitation for anybody who would like to join us. Maybe I can look at some of the comments. Anna, if there are any comments on Facebook, I'll be happy to take them. I know that we have currently 18 attendees in the webinar, and we also have some people watching live on Facebook, so I'm happy to answer some questions. So some questions from the audience. Thanks, I have to run, but you're all doing very cool work. It's exciting to discover more people that are having fun playing in and with nature. I'd love to play with you all in the future. So this is one of the students from the Innovation Lab, Tricia. One of my students, PhD students, said I grew up in the middle of the African bush, and I think my exposure to nature in my childhood was the best part of my childhood. These ideas of nature and city coexisting are wonderful and would be so valuable for children and adults and living in urban settings. So those are the comments. If there are any questions from the audience, we're happy to take them. Are there any comments from the guests as well? Anything else that you'd like to add? What would that look like if we did a forest of imagination in Montreal? Who could we involve? Where could we do it? Would it be inside Concordia? Would it be outside? Could it be in a park? Could it be temporary pop-up? pop-up forests?
Well, and Louise, I put in the comments, in Montreal, there's actually a very nice urban tree installation. And it's near the museum, one of the museums, McCord, I think. And they're popping up in and out of Montreal. So if you want to do something with forest and imagination, maybe you should contact that group because it's really nice what they've done.
Geneviève, are you referring to the artificial trees that are set up by the McCord?
Absolutely, yes.
And those are lovely. It would be nice to have something special for the city, even in the Concordia space. There is that little, it's a very odd space, but I think some greenery would definitely spice it up. It's a concrete space between the Van Hoot Cafe and the museum, the gallery at Concordia.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just to fill up a cold space that's made of concrete can definitely bright up the space.
And Vila, I also put another comment in the chat, is there's an installation in Austria that they actually planted a forest in a stadium as an art installation, stating that in the future, forests would be art, or they'd be confined to these small places. It was actually a very unique concept.
There's a couple of sorry, you go.
Sorry about that. I have a question from Ariel, who's the coordinator of the Innovation Lab, and he asks Sasha specifically, and maybe others, how do you navigate the discomfort of uncertainty when you don't have a specific end in mind during the creative process?
It depends. So I think that it's actually more about associating discomfort as a positive thing. So usually during the course of a project, if I am very comfortable doing it, either I have already done it, or I'm about to make a terrible mistake, or it's terribly uninteresting. So I think it's more on how to perceive discomfort and associating it as a challenge or something interesting that will come forward. If anything, it's yeah, I mean, Andrew, how do you feel about it? That's more or less my feeling on discomfort. Yeah. It's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when you get that feeling in your gut, then you know you're onto something. But yeah, the idea also of uncertainty, I think that is something that we have to really grab onto and embrace uncertainty, because especially going into a time where we have no idea what's coming next, then we have to be agile and move quickly and think and make connections and be creative first and foremost to do the creative problem solving that's going to be required of all of us.
And as far as also navigating it, I think this is also a plus for collaborating, is finding yourself uncomfortable and knowing that, oh, let me go and reach out or try to find, and not to shy away from not knowing and welcoming the learning process.
I mean, that's been what's been wonderful working with Sasha and also with Penny, how we've come together, is that, yeah, there are people who know how to do the things that you don't know how to do. And people love to, to help, and that's something we forget. And we're not alone with our, the things we can't figure out.
Yeah, we really value uncertainty, failure, not knowing. I think it's beautiful learning. And that's, I think, why when I met you, Anne-Louise, I really got your kind of values and principles that underpin the Innovation Lab. So we're very happy to be involved. It's fantastic. You must come to Bar and Berlin.
Apparently we can travel very soon, so most likely you will see me in the fall or in the winter. Apparently Bath is a wonderful place. That's what Geneviève just told me. So I think we're approaching the end. I'm going to hand it over to Ernest, who will be doing the closing, and then over to Anna.
Thank you, Annalise. Thank you, everyone, for attending this event. It was really nice to have you all. So just to let you know, we're going to have another open lunch, a very late open lunch on July 8th at 4 p.m. And it's basically on the new perspective of superheroes with celebrity Daryl Malone, the Broken Lord, and the political professor Travis Smith. So there's more open lunches that will happen later in August on new materialities and adaptive controllers. We're open to suggestions on topics. If you have any ideas, feel free to contact us. And on behalf of the Innovation Lab, I just want to thank the Fourth Space for hosting these events, to the Milieu Institute for their collaboration, to our guests, Andrew Amansan, Penny Hay, Geneviève Lamarche, Sacha Mbala, Villarou, and everyone who joined us today. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email us at innovation.lab@concordia.ca. I've also added it to the chat so you can contact us anytime. Have a good one.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to welcome you into the space for future collaborations. We have 3,000 square feet here to play around in, experiment, and do exactly the type of work that you all are engaged in. We open right onto the street, and there's a flow of energy and people here all the time. So on behalf of Fourth Space, we look forward to continued collaborations with all of you, possibly in the future, and welcoming you here. Okay, on that note, folks, thanks again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And thanks again to all the panelists for sharing your work with us. It was really inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great day. Thanks.